digital inclusion, digital equity, digital literacy. These are all terms that we may have heard but may not fully understand how they relate to our day-to-day lives. To fully participate in our society and democracy, we must engage civically and culturally. It's important for employment, for lifelong learning, and access to essential services. It's important that we all get online. Now, the state of Connecticut has the Commission for Educational Technology. And let's get up close and personal with their executive director, Doug Casey. Welcome back, and I'd like to thank Doug Casey for being our guest today to talk about all things digital, inclusion, equity, literacy, broadband, and your agency commission, the Connecticut Commission of Educational Technology. So can you tell us the role of your agency?
Sure thing, Joni. Thanks for having me here today. Yeah, the Commission for Educational Technology has been around for about 20 years. And if you think back to what the world was like right around the year 2000, it was a big deal just to get connected. So the Commission was really created with a charge to connect schools and libraries, universities, really create a fiber backbone for the state so that people could get online. And back in that time, getting online for education meant getting online through schools and libraries. And so out of that came the Connecticut Education Network, which still stands out as a real gem within Connecticut. I don't think we want to refer to it as an unsung hero. We want to sing the praises of CEN because it's just it's a national model for what connectivity can look like. But that was one of the things that the Commission set out to do, but really broad-based. It was to create and steward a statewide 5-year technology plan. And so that looks like matters of digital equity and inclusion, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. It includes establishing standards for what students should be able to do with technology, not just have access to it, but really be proficient with it. We also do a good amount of work around privacy and security, as well as personalized learning. And so how can you apply technology in the classroom, in the lecture hall, and after a year and a half of COVID, really looking at what is this new frontier for online learning. And so that's really what we're all about. It's a very broad mission, but in some ways it's really simple, which is the effective use of technology.
It is very broad. And how do you work and interact with individual schools who have, or libraries, because I believe libraries are part of your, I'm going to say jurisdiction also, but those that look to you for guidance as to how they need to continue?
Yeah, absolutely right. So the Commission is comprised of 24 members, as a little bit of background. And so those members make up, we have the state librarian, we have librarians from across the state who serve, and we also have a advisory council, 2 advisory councils of 50 subject matter experts who really weigh in on what the priorities for digital learning should be, and provide really valuable feedback for the members as to the sort of policies and programs that we should pursue and support, advocacy issues, et cetera. So the constituencies that we represent are there really at the table among those commission members. We have university leaders, we have members of the private sector, we have leaders from schools and universities. So we have a lot of subject matter experts, and each one of those individuals is really knowledgeable in the work that they do. But they also represent tens of thousands of constituents, teachers, principals. We have appointees from the governor's office and the General Assembly. So it's a great, think of this as the EdTech think tank within the state.
And parents of school children.
Well, virtually everybody on the commission is a parent, and we also have, we just added, from the last legislative session, we reinstated 4 members representing teachers and school leaders, which we felt was a really important addition to, or a reinstatement to the commission membership to reflect educators and really through them parent interests as well.
So Doug, can we break down the 3 things that we started the program with, which is digital equity, digital inclusion, and digital literacy, to
Right.
just give a broad overview of each one, and then we can go a little deeper. So let's talk about the equity issue.
Right. Well, quite often, and these terms, as you said, these terms get thrown around a lot, and there's no sort of single scientific definition of each. But probably the way I would position digital equity is, and there's a metaphor I think many people have heard of, which is, various children standing behind a ball field fence, and there's a taller one, a middle one, and the shorter one. And equity isn't giving them all the same size stool. It's giving them the stool or the crate to stand on that gets them to that same level where they have the same opportunity. In other words, they can see over the fence and they can take part in enjoying the baseball game. And it may be a simple metaphor, but I think in some ways we need to think about equity, digital equity, as access to technology, which is a broadband connection, a computer, as what is it that's going to take us to get every single student and every single teacher to that same level of opportunity. And it crosses over into digital inclusion. Probably the best definition of digital inclusion has 4 sort of pillars to it. One is a computer, a device, and one that's fairly current, that's got, not to get into all the bells and whistles, but enough processing speed and memory that it can handle things like video conferencing and some of the collaborative web-based tools that people use quite often. And then you also need a connection. You need a high-speed internet connection. And I think that's where a lot of understanding is needed as to sort of what's adequate. When we talk about broadband, the bare minimum right now, the national standard is 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up. For most people experiencing that, it's still rather slow. And the more technology advances, the more broadband gets used. So we really need to be thinking about a broadband connection as something that's very scalable, and ideally something that's 100 down and ideally 100 up. And those synchronous connections are really important because so many people these days are doing video conferencing, and that requires a lot of download speed and upload speed as you're sort of pushing your video feed up to everybody else on your Zoom call or whoever you're talking to. The third pillar is, in addition to devices and broadband, is technical support. Mm-hmm. I help my mom all the time with tech. She'll leave me these voice messages of, "Hi, it's your mother. I love you. I hope you're doing well. And oh, by the way, I've got a technical question," right? And I think we all have family members, those of us who are a little bit more technically inclined, mm-hmm. have those family members that need a little help. And we do that, mm-hmm. right? But what about those folks who don't necessarily have a family member that they can contact? And so I think having a technical backup of support is important. And then finally, in addition to the device, the broadband, and the tech support, a close cousin of tech support is training and skills, right? Mm-hmm. So just because you're online with all the other aspects doesn't mean that you're making effective use of technology. Mm-hmm. So it's really important for people to have those skills to learn how to not just learn what's current, but also learn to learn, right? To have that sort of mindset of inquisitiveness to learn new tools and technologies, but also be really smart about how they're using technology. And a big part of that is protecting their data footprint, protecting themselves against cyber risks, which could be a whole nother show. Mm-hmm. But being really good stewards of those tools and learning to learn and make effective use of technology. So digital inclusion, think of it as a device, a connection, tech support, and the skills to effectively learn and continue learning.
And that was beautifully said. Thank you. Digital literacy. So when we talk about digital literacy, we're talking about making sure that those pieces are in place for everybody. And the goal is everyone across the state of Connecticut. So can we touch on why that is so important? Why is it so important to be online? We know the obvious, those of us who are working and maybe participating in Zoom, those of us who go to school or have children that need to connect to a class online. But what are some of the other reasons why it's so important to make sure that folks have access to online for services?
Sure. There are so many examples, and you gave some great ones around education and telework. Telehealth is another one that is really important. We think about, we're making our way through the pandemic, and at some point, maybe it will be over completely, we hope, right? But in the midst of it all, I think we've been, so many of us have grown much more acute to healthcare and overall wellness. I think social distancing has also brought a lot of social isolation. So as we think about wellness and well-being, there is the opportunity to have a virtual meeting with your doctor. And I had a great example in the fall. I was probably spending too much time in front of a screen, and I developed a neck pain. And I was going to drive to a couple towns over, sit in a probably a crowded waiting room, wait for a doctor, get seen, and not to minimize the process, but probably get some pain relievers and then go home, and that would be the end of it. Instead, I clicked a button. I continued doing the work that I had in front of me. The doctor arrived. We spent 5 minutes having a quick conversation. He gave me a prescription. I filled it, and my pain was gone in a day and a half, right? And so all that, and I come from a place of privilege of having a dependable computer and a broadband connection, but that's one way that I could really take advantage of telehealth. I think a lot of people take advantage of telehealth, broadly defined as getting help and connecting with family and friends. That social connection is so important as well. And there are, as the state of Connecticut looks to modernize so many of its services, as much as we all enjoy standing in line at the DMV, a lot of those services are now going online.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I renewed my license online and was thrilled with it, and more to come. But we're disenfranchising a lot of our citizens if they're not online, right? If we have all these services online, the have-nots of technology and the skills to use it will be the ones who remain standing in line when everybody else is getting this done with a few clicks of the button. We don't want that to be the case. The state is really dedicated to making sure that everybody has access to technology, so those efficiencies can be reaping rewards for everybody in the state.
Absolutely. Some of the government agencies, even the federal government level, Social Security cards, Medicare, those kinds of things, to be able to log on and be able to look at maybe your own portal. You talked about telehealth. Being a proactive partner in your healthcare means that you can go on and look at your test results. You can see your blood work. You can remember, oh yes, this is what happened before you're going again. A time saver. And we have parents who have had children have to take classes in school, and talk about, just for a minute here, your commission did a phenomenal job in a short period of time by getting how many computers and students up to where they needed to be able to go to school when COVID first hit.
Sure. Well, first of all, for clarification, it was not single-handedly our commission. It was a wonderful team of people from various agencies under the governor's leadership. He could have chosen to do a lot of things in terms of his priorities, but he said we've got to get our kids online and we've got to get them connected. So by the numbers, 142,000 computers through state investment as well as partnerships working with philanthropies to get those computers into students' hands, and big kudos to the Department of Education for spearheading that. My friend Ajit out there who led that, and then the broadband aspect of it. So that was sort of what my concentration was in working with the major cable carriers in the state, working out agreements with them, and then sort of streamlining the process, working really closely with our school contacts, because they were the ones who knew which kids were showing up to virtual class and which ones were not showing up to virtual class. So they could kind of identify by the numbers, even by the student, which kids needed to get connected at home. And so through a series of vouchers and other kinds of streamlining processes, we were able to get those connections set up in homes. We also were able to deploy mobile hotspots, and we really targeted those at kids who might have they might have a dual custody situation, right? So to connect one family or one home and not the other home wouldn't be success. We needed to get them a mobile connection so that they could be online anywhere. So we not only really tried to design the program around getting every student connected, but getting every student connected with the right tool that was going to work for them.
Is the federal government providing any kind of subsidy or any kind of help for a person, resident, a family who maybe cannot afford the high cost of broadband service? Absolutely.
So the pandemic has been really challenging for a lot of people, but out of it has come some wonderful relief programs, and one of them is the emergency broadband benefit. So the emergency broadband benefit is a program that provides a credit of up to $50 per month for qualifying households for them to pay for internet. And I say pay for internet broadly based because if you qualify, whether you've been online for, say, 10 years or whether you're just getting online now, if you qualify, you get that $50 a month credit. And for a lot of families, that just pays for internet outright, so it's effectively a free connection. The other part of EBB, or the emergency broadband benefit, is a credit of up to $100 for a new computer, which is a really nice benefit to have as well. By the way, for those who are living on tribal lands, the home internet credit is up to $75 per month. So it's a really substantial credit against your internet bill. And we are, at this point, as we look at future programs and future iterations of this, right now it's a very stable program. And the way things are looking is it will turn into, most likely, a permanent benefit. So,
are people taking advantage of it?
We have about 40,000, I should say 50,000 Connecticut residents who've taken advantage of this already. So that is great. We're seeing great progress. But we also encourage local leaders at the chief data officer's website, data.ct.gov. Local leaders or just interested citizens can go online and find a map broken down by town and find out what that progress looks like of how many people have signed up for EBB. But we're really hoping to get 100,000, at least 100,000 signups by Thanksgiving. And excited about that.
Yeah, so, great goal. Yeah. And I understand, if I read the criteria correctly, that if you are a single person making less than $99,000 a year, or a family or couple making less than $198,000 a year, you should go online and we will provide the link at the end of this program to see what the qualifiers are, and that way, and how to apply, because as application online only?
So the application is online only, and so that may seem like a contradiction in terms. If I don't have an internet connection, you're telling me to go to a website, how do I do that, right? It's a circular argument. The website is, by the way, it's www.getemergencybroadband.org. And you can go there to look at the qualification criteria and sign up. And we are looking at, it's hard to get the specific numbers because there's so many different programs that enable you to qualify. But SNAP, Medicaid, parents of students who qualify for free or reduced lunch, veterans, there's a whole host of eligibility that gets you in that door to become eligible for the program. But if you need help and can't get online in any way, go to your local library. They are your community anchor, and they're to help get you online through the program.
And for folks who are not on some of those programs that you mentioned, if there was an income loss due to the COVID, if you were furloughed, laid off, if you were not able to work, that is also a qualifier. Absolutely. And so local leaders, there's outreach materials that are available, really nice toolkit that has posters and other information there. And the problems, what are some of the barriers that you're seeing with folks not wanting to sign up, saying this is too good to be true, or is language a barrier, trying to have people sign up?
Sure. So this idea of, if you create a program, if you build it, they will come. It's not always that simple. I mean, sometimes with technology, the most challenging parts of a program are the human factors, right? So you touched on a couple of good examples. I spent the last year and a half working with schools, oftentimes taking calls from parents asking about another program, which is the Everybody Learns program, which you had mentioned earlier, the sort of the education initiative. But with the emergency broadband benefit and other federal programs, it sounds too good to be true. It really is true. I mean, it really is a $50 credit per month, and it looks like this is going to be around for a while, we hope permanently, because there's a real need there. But there are materials in multiple languages to help you get online. Some of the challenges that we've encountered in the past in helping people get online and use technology is, you're correct, they're wary of working with cable companies. I've talked with a lot of great people at all the carriers who are excited to help people get online. It's more business for them, of course. They would be excited about that too, but they do care about getting people connected. But there are other reasons as well. There are families who aren't comfortable sharing any personal information, even if it's just the bare minimum information to get signed up for an account. As I said, there can be language barriers. We have undocumented families in the state who really want to keep a low profile, and so there's sensitivity there. So there could be a whole host of reasons why families may not want to take advantage. I think we tend to think about connectivity as either you're online and you're flying with high speeds, or you don't have anything. There's also this other problem of underconnectivity, which is to say you're in a multi-tenant home and your next door neighbor has a connection and you sort of borrow it from them, right? You sort of get online through their connection and it's kind of slow, but it's good enough, right? And so what we really want to encourage, and that's just one example, it could be parents who have a cell phone or a student who has a cell phone. And cell phones are great in terms of mobility, but they're not really great in terms of getting you online for, say, a video call or having a streaming session with your professor for university. So, we really encourage people to take advantage of, in this case, the emergency broadband benefit, because it will get them that really fast broadband connection at home that's dedicated to them and their family. And once you get, say, a student online, the parents are benefiting, other students are benefiting. So the sort of wave of broadband really lifts all ships in this case.
It does. Now, let's move over to the other side of it, and that's the folks that are training people, that are making services available to people, computers available. You mentioned the library. So there's the Emergency Connectivity Fund program,
right,
and that will reimburse schools and libraries for reasonable costs. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure
and
thing.
If there are those schools and libraries who are not familiar or on the surface of deciding which way they're going to go, what's available to them?
Sure thing. Yeah. So the ECF, or Emergency Connectivity Fund, was designed for schools and libraries. So unlike the emergency broadband, which any qualifying citizen can apply for, the Emergency Connectivity Fund is really designed for our schools and libraries. And what it does is provide connectivity for students at home and for patrons at home. So an example might be the fund would go to your local library to buy mobile hotspots that would be on loan. In the same way that you take a book out, you might take this mobile hotspot out for a week or so. Gets you online at home, or quite frankly, anywhere you are. So really great for people who don't have that connection. Maybe they're applying for EBB and waiting for that connection to get set up. They could go to their library and get a hotspot.
Great idea.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, really, there's a whole nother program that's been around for years called E-Rate. And that's always been there to connect schools and libraries, buildings. But we know now that, we talked about all those devices and the explosion of educational technology that's really come about through the pandemic and really years up until that. Well, even before all that took place, there was a lot of digital learning going on. And so this old model of if we connect to school, everything's all set. And the reality is students are learning outside of school, sometimes as much as they are within the school if they're learning on nights and weekends. So that's what the Emergency Connectivity Fund is all about. It's to fund schools and libraries to connect students and patrons at home. So the good news is Connecticut did really well in the first wave of funding. That second wave of funding is underway now, and so I would encourage school leaders, district leaders, and library leaders to visit emergencyconnectivityfund.org, and they can learn more about it. Their local tech contacts, whether through tech consortiums or their school district tech leader, should know about the program, and they can go ahead and file applications for mobile hotspots, for computers that have built-in connections, etc. So it's a great program. We really want everybody in Connecticut to take advantage of that.
Great program, and great to know that there's a commission like yours that's watching all of these things and helping us to navigate where we need to go, whether we're residents or whether we're leaders or educational institutions, to be able to have everybody working towards the same goal of having all folks in Connecticut online and at speeds that we think that are appropriate for us to be able to have those connections and be able to participate in meetings or classes and have it be successful. Can we talk about the folks who maybe have the means to have broadband and have the accessibility to a computer or a tablet, but don't have that learning component and maybe shy about maybe not having someone like you who was helping your mom with questions, maybe not having that and not wanting to come out and say, I'm just not going to, I'll play solitaire on it, but I'm not really going to get onto the internet and look at how I can use it. What is available for those folks?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of great resources. Again, I mentioned the library. A lot of community centers will have programs. For example, your YMCAs, your JCCs. A lot of schools have provided help to parents. That may seem like hard to believe, but our commission did a survey recently and asked our school leaders, how many of you have changed protocols to provide training and support to parents as well as students, and the vast majority had. So you think about that's a very noble undertaking that they've taken. But there are a lot of resources that libraries provide in person. Another survey that we conducted across libraries showed that they're doing a lot of programming, both in person as well as virtual. So you can sort of log in at a certain point and get those skills. Common Sense Media is another great site. There are resources there, that entire curricula that help you get up to speed and make the most use of technology.
It's all there, Doug.
It is.
It's all there. It really is all there. So if you wanted to log in from home and take your time, and sometimes you might be in a class and somebody's ahead of you and you're not really picking it up and you don't want to say anything, that's a really great way of redoing and going over things until you really do have that understanding. But it certainly sounds like the state and the federal government are doing all that they can and you can to make sure that this happens and happens for us quickly. I want to thank you. We have about 30 seconds left. Is there one final thought that you want to leave with us today?
Well, I would just encourage everybody to get online, dive into those skills. Don't be shy about what you don't know. Ask questions. Go to your library. Use those online resources. If you're not online, go to emergencybroadband.org. Check it out. And thank you for your time.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk about these important issues.
Very important issues. Thank you. And stay tuned at the end of the program for the links. We'll see you next time on Up Close and Personal.